Leaders from around the world gathered in the Bay Area last week to attend that Global Climate Action Summit. So Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown what he thinks will come of it.
Well, I don't know. I didn't stick around. I only went for the parties. But it did not appear to be a thriller, so to speak. You got an opportunity to talk to the mayor of Paris. You got an opportunity to talk to the ambassador from Canada, and they have an ambassador on climate change. And that's awesome.
What?
Yes. The Canadians have. I'm seated next to the mayor of Toronto, and he introduces me to this lovely person who is the ambassador for the nation on climate control. So, recommendation to Jerry Brown, get a state person in charge of climate.
Or put himself in charge of it.
Yeah, he'd love to be that, I think.
At play here was also the public relations war. We had the environmentalists who showed up and shut down the streets of San Francisco saying that Jerry Brown is not going far enough.
Yeah, and Michael Bloomberg said, only in former mayor of New York,
who's financing this little party,
said only in America do you get environmentalists protesting at an environmental summit. Maybe only in San Francisco, but to go back to your earlier question, I mean, it's not clear that anything binding is going to come out of this, that there are going to be a lot of promises and accords and things like that signed, but nothing enforceable that you really have to abide by.
Except only one thing of great significance. I believe it was the first salvo Bloomberg for president.
You really think so? You think that this is a launch?
I do believe.
Why? Why do you think this is a launch for?
Why else would he be doing that? He doesn't need it for Bloomberg News. You know, he's got to be doing it for some reason.
But he's been rumored before to be a president.
No, he's going to be a Democrat this time. He's going to run as a Democrat.
Okay, so I'm not sure anything's coming out of the climate summit, but we got a prediction out of
you. Oh, sure, he's coming out of the climate summit. He's coming out. And can you imagine? You have an issue that nobody can challenge you on. You know, how will Biden raise the question? And you're going to have Gore standing next to you in all of his glory, discussing, whatever he calls it this time around.
Does Al Gore have glory?
I think it's going to be Bloomberg, and I do believe that all this money spent was to showcase this talented human being who can afford to process himself.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure if that is a pitch for Bloomberg or a pitch for you to be his campaign chair.
Or his climate ambassador.
Right now. So, back to you guys.
So the Bloomberg brand, I mean, isn't it a little bit muddled because he's been a Republican and independent and now a Democrat? Doesn't that hurt him?
Potentially. But remember, Bernie Sanders was a longtime independent and socialist as well and managed to get get a lot of votes within the Democratic Party. So it's not.
But Bernie was never a Republican as well.
True, but Bloomberg technically was a Republican just for less than 10 years, just while he was mayor, about a term and a half when he was a mayor of New York, and then quickly became an independent again. So maybe he feels like he can get back in. Remember, he's spending $80 million to help Democrats retake the House in November. I think that's going to buy him a lot of love there.
New details are emerging about the sexual misconduct allegation involving Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. An article recounts a letter from a Bay Area accuser about an incident in the early 1980s. According to The New Yorker, the woman's letter says that during an encounter at a party, Kavanaugh held her down and that he attempted to force himself on her. She also says that Kavanaugh and a high school classmate, quote, turned up the music that was playing in the room to conceal the sound of her protests, and that Kavanaugh covered her mouth with his hands. Senator Dianne Feinstein forwarded the woman's letter to the FBI. Now, meanwhile, Kavanaugh has strongly denied the allegations.
Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, in this age of the Me Too movement, what kind of impact, if any, will this letter have on Kavanaugh's nomination?
Virtually none. After all, we already have the president of Clarence Thomas going through the process with a witness, and nothing happened.
But in this case, we have
the Me Too movement that's happening. Things are very different now than they were back when Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill were going back and forth during his confirmation. Having said that, it doesn't seem like something from so far back, from someone who has had, by all accounts, a stellar reputation since then, is going to change any minds. Like, the people who don't like him are going to say, oh, this is one more reason we don't like him. The people who do aren't going to change their minds, I don't think.
His problem, though, is if he says it didn't happen, and his companion, whom this lady claims was part of it, says he's wrong, it did happen, he was just too drunk, that's a problem.
Okay, even if it was when you were a minor?
Right, and everyone is the same age. And look, it sounds pretty awful. I mean, from what we understand the description of it, it sounds absolutely terrible and terrifying. But how do you disprove that? The point of statutes of limitations isn't just arbitrary, right?
The statutes of limitations is for court. What about the court of public
But it's
opinion
also for
on this
proof,
matter?
right? How do you statutes of limitations
Well,
are
can you
to
disprove
preserve
something
proof.
like this?
Statute of limitations has nothing whatsoever to do with you too movements and Me Too movements. I mean, it is incredible, the combination of the two that tubes you. You could be 40 years ago and you'd be in trouble.